What's right in front of you is the majesty of being. That's what's right in front of you. It's inexhaustibly complex and full of potential, and there's no reason to assume that wherever you happen to be isn't as good a starting place as anywhere else. You're a damaged structure, you're in a damaged structure, but you know, at least it's got some walls. You know, you're not being fed to the lions on a regular basis, so that's a good thing. And you can emerge forward, you know, heroically, magically, to confront the chaos that constantly threatens the structure within which you live. And you can free something as a consequence of that. You can learn something, you can strengthen yourself. Accept responsibility for the catastrophe of your life. And that way you transcend it simultaneously.
What is right living? What is one to do in a society which is corrupt?
Well, the positive meaning of life is to be found in noting the state of lack of repair of the walled city that you inhabit, and then sallying forth to do something about that, to repair the breaches and to fix up the walls and to make the structure that you inhabit as secure and as productive as it possibly can be. Well, and so then, you know, what do? Well, you put the city back together, and maybe the way you want it, so that it's functional and efficient and beautiful, and so that people can flourish there. And then not only that, not only do you repair the city when you do that, but you make yourself the sort of thing that continually repairs the city, and that's even better. There's no shortage of opportunities to do that. You can do that in your own mind, you can do that in your own room, you can do that in your own household, in your local community. And maybe if you get good at doing it at all those levels, then you can start to look beyond that. You can always do that. It doesn't matter what your personal circumstances are. There's always something that isn't right near you, isn't correct, isn't laid out properly, that you could just fix if you wanted to. The role that you should play is to make things better wherever you are, however you can. That what would actually happen would be that things would get better wherever you are in all sorts of ways. Notice that no matter where you are, there's a richness and a complexity that's completely inexhaustible right at hand. The fact that things aren't exactly the way they should be at least gives you something to do. I really don't believe that anything done right is trivial. It won't stay trivial for long if you do it. One of the things that really makes your life meaningful is the clear realization that you're headed somewhere better than you are now. And then it's even better if you also understand that there's a direct causal relationship between the things that you're doing and the steepness of that incline. To ingest the ultimate in suffering is to simultaneously ingest the antidote to the catastrophe of the knowledge of death. It's a very strange paradox. A little knowledge of death destroys you. Full voluntary acceptance of it is the cure. That's the idea. The answer, in some sense, to the tragedy of life, to the catastrophe of life, to the fall, is to adopt the responsibility of mortality that goes along with that, and to play that game maximally. And paradoxically, it's in the willingness to do that that the solution emerges. It isn't certainty. There's no certainty. Doesn't matter. This is still the best pathway forward. It's better to be engaged in the solution of a complex problem than not to have a problem at all.
Be willing to tell the truth. Be willing to die in the truth. So the willingness to tell the truth about who it is you are is the willingness to no longer be a victim. How God has wronged you, or how your parents have wronged you, or how the nature of things has wronged you, how circumstances have wronged you, as you have wronged yourself. All of that is a story of being the victim. There has been horrible suffering done, and you have been on both ends of it. You have perpetuated it, and you have felt it directed at you, or consciously choose to let it go. Regardless of pain, regardless of circumstances, regardless of others, regardless of the real horror that occurs in the world, to meet fully the experience to not have to hide or run or justify or wail or curse or moan, just to meet it. To be willing to be annihilated by it is the same willingness to discover directly what can never be annihilated.
The brain has been conditioned, educated, trained to observe what is and to create its opposite. And therefore there is conflict. Observe, not analyze, observe. Then there is only that and not the other. Only deal with what is. Everything is not. Understand the nature of anger, or the nature of greed, and so on and so on. So you eliminate totally the quarrel, the struggle between the opposites. Remain with what is.
And looking at life by yourself.
Not try to suppress it, go beyond it, escape from it. Then what is withers away. You experiment with it. When I remain with what is, then I can go into it fully, completely, and go beyond it. Not the clever intelligence of the intellect, but the capacity to observe, to see objectively what is happening, both outwardly and inwardly, and knowing there is no difference between the outer and the inner. It's like a tide that goes out and comes in.
It's an inward step. An inward step can be taken only by an individual. It's a very intimate thing, something very, very concerned with only with you, nothing else to do with anybody else. You must be beyond any kind of conflict, isn't it? Both within and outside. Because if you have to take an inward step, you have to transform yourself. If you have to believe something, you don't have to transform yourself. The moment you believe something, you have a new kind of confidence. When idiots become very confident, the world is in danger. An intelligent person is constantly hesitating with life. With every step he wonders whether what he is doing is okay or not. But a fool has absolute confidence.
Be willing to accept feedback, to accept that you may be making mistakes here and there, self-correct yourself, and take all good things in moderation.
Imagine that you were taking care of yourself like you were someone you actually cared for. And then you thought, okay, I'm caring for this person, I would like things to go as well for them as possible. What would their life have to be like in order for that to be the case? 3 years from now, you can have what you need. You got to be careful about it. You can't have everything. You can have what would be good for you, but you have to figure out what it is, and then you have to aim at it. It's a strange thing. It's not quite that simple because you may formulate an idea about what would be good for you, and then you take 10 steps towards that, and you find out that your formulation was a bit off, and so you have to reformulate your goal. So you're kind of going like this as you move towards the goal. But a huge part of the reason that people fail is because they don't ever set up the criteria for success. And so, since success is a very narrow line and very unlikely, the probability that you're going to stumble on it randomly is zero. You reorient your life in every possible way to make the probability that that will occur as certain as possible. Get your act together and align yourself properly along all of the dimensions of your being, from the tiniest microcosm to the ultimate macrocosm. And that's a sacrificial idea, right? It's like, you don't get everything, but maybe you can have what you need. You have to be deadly serious about it. Exactly what is it that I would aim at? What remarkably stupid things am I doing on a regular basis to absolutely screw up my life?
The very nature of your intelligence is such that if you do something stupid today, tonight your intelligence will bother you. Why did I do this?
You have to decide that you want to know. You're perfectly capable of immense feats of imagination and dream and fantasies. What would happen if you consulted yourself about the best possible outcome for you? You might get an answer. Well, that's what this proposition is. I'm so smart, everything should just come to me. It's like, sorry, that's not how the world works. You develop enough wisdom so that you can see all the things that people can do that are of high ethical utility, that are outside your niche. You have to not assume that your niche makes you superior. And it makes the person extraordinarily unbalanced. They can't compete outside the niche. Don't do that for very long, feeding on the remains and with no gratitude and no attempt to replenish what it is that you're taking from. Conceptualize how things could be great if they were great for you, if you were taking care of yourself, and then work to make that the case for everyone else. Treat yourself properly. That's a hard thing to do because you're a fallen, shameful, cowardly, deceitful, malevolent, mortal creature. And so it's not easy, and you know it. And it isn't obvious that people treat themselves better than they treat other people. I don't think that's obvious at all. But maybe you could start with yourself and think, okay, I'm going to take care of myself as if I have value. What would that look like? And then I'm going to work to extend that courtesy to everyone else. When you feel as if you're meaningfully engaged in the world, when the terror of your mortality strips away and you're engaged and it's timeless, that's the deepest instinct you have telling you that you're in the right place at the right time. And then what you do is practice being there. But you'll see, oh, I'm in the right place. It's like, okay, how'd I get here? What am I doing right? You know, how is it that this could happen more often? I'd like this to happen more often. How would I have to conduct myself in order for that to happen more often? And so you have an aim. Well, let's say your aim is the highest possible aim. Well then, so that sets up the world around you. It organizes all of your perceptions. It organizes what you see and you don't see. It organizes your emotions and your motivations. So you organize yourself around that aim, and then what happens is the day manifests itself as a set of challenges and problems, and if you solve them properly, then you stay on the pathway towards that aim. And you can concentrate on the day. Everything that you're doing every day is related to the highest possible aim that you can conceptualize. Well, that's the very definition of the meaning that would sustain you in your life. You may have the opportunity to inhabit the highest possible good that you're positing into existence. Perhaps not. I mean, if you build a house, then maybe you can live in it. If you don't build a house, you're not going to be able to live in it. If you build a good house, then you'll be able to live in a good house. And then you think, well, what's the barrier? And the barrier is, are you willing to accept the responsibility? And part of the answer to that is, reduce the damn responsibility until it's tolerable. You don't have to fix everything at once. You could just start by fixing the things that you could fix. You could do it with even less self-sacrifice. You could start by fixing only the things that you want to fix. Aim at the highest good. Tool yourself into something that can attain it. And go out there and manifest it in the world. An ideal is always a judge. There's no difference between an ideal and a judge. And so you're eternally judged by your own ideal. If you have no ideal, well then you've got no direction and no meaning in your life. And then of course, the more extreme the ideal, the harsher the judge. That's the source of guilt and shame and withdrawal, and then resentment, and then murderousness, and then genocide. And so there's no escaping from it. There's no escaping from eternal judgment. That's the archetypal story. I should be very, very cognizant of how I'm failing to live up to the ideal. And so it's just better to think, all right, I'm probably blind in many, many ways. And maybe there are some ways that I could rectify that, because it's highly probable that you're blind in all sorts of ways. I mean, in fact, it's virtually certain. And so it's just more useful to think, how is it that I'm wrong in this situation? Just because it works for someone else, I mean, that's interesting and all that, but it's no proof that it'll work for you. You have to be all in this game. It's a massive risk. It's the ultimate in risks, right? You have to be willing to lose your life in order to find it. It's like, exactly right.
And it demands everything, and it takes everything. And it leaves nothing, and that nothing is worth losing everything for.
It isn't certainty. There's no certainty. No one can tell you how it will work for you.